everyone, and welcome to another video on our ongoing Oracle Cloud video series. Today, I'm going to be covering some features in the new reports feature in Oracle EPM, including how to do some of the common tasks you might have done in the legacy financial reporting studio, that it might have changed a little bit. And I'm also going to cover some things to consider if you do have reports built in the legacy financial reporting web studio that you would like to import into the new reports format. So I'm going to start off just by walking us through where the new reports tool is located. So you'll find it on your main screen under reports. And you'll see the same folder structure here as you do see for your form folders as well. So it's using the same folder structure as your forms, whereas before FRS reports lived in their own little form folder structure. Currently, only power users and above have the ability to create and edit reports. This might be something that changes in the future, as opposed to the old financial reporting studio where any users could create forms, could create reports. And so you'll find that you might want to create separate folders for your reports, different from where your forms are, but you'll see the same folders in both locations. All right, so I just want to give a little walkthrough of what the new FR layout looks like and how you might change some of the things you would commonly change in the old financial reporting web studio reports. So I have a little demo report here. I'm going to hit edit. You'll see the layout of the various pieces of the reports. You've got your headers, your text, your images, and down here we have our data grid. So you need to click on that and click the little edit button to get into your grid where you can start to finally move things around. And so like your old reports, you have your POV up here. You put some dimensions in your rows and your columns. Now, the first thing is, how do you move your dimensions around? So you'd go up to this target looking item and you'll see it says show dimension layout. So if you want to move your dimensions around, you click on that and it brings you to a little grid where you can actually move your dimensions around. So here you see I have account and cost center, period in my columns, and then my POV dimensions. If I want to move something down, let's just say I want to, for some reason, move entity down, you just click and drag, and then you have to sort of hover over the rows, the dimensions in the rows. You can move them around if you want to reorder them. And you could do the same thing for moving things down into the columns. You'll see if you have attribute dimensions, other dimensions to be added, you could click the plus button. And that's just how you will move your dimensions into rows or columns. I'm going to move that back up there for now. And then once you're ready with your dimensions in your rows, columns, and POV, you will click out of that dimension layout view. Now, member selection. So you can do this in a way that is very similar to the past, but they also have some enhancements for member selection. So I've just got a simple view of net revenue by one cost center. If I want to do my member selection, I can click on that dimension, and then you still have your member selector up here. You will navigate down to your cost centers that you want to see in the in your report. You can also use functions. You'll see that functions are available to the right of any member here. So if I want to see all descendants of my total cost centers, I can click here. One nice thing about an enhancement here in the new Financial Reporting Studio is that you can actually just pick the level 0, the bottom of any particular member. In old Financial Web Studio, I know it was always a difficult kind of logic selection you had to make to choose the bottom, just the bottom level of a particular part of a roll-up. But now you have I could pick the bottom level of total cost centers, and you can also say that you want it to be inclusive of total cost centers. Then you have your selections over here. If I wanted to get rid of one, you just hover over it, get to the trash can, and you can always edit your selection as well. If I didn't want to be inclusive of total cost centers anymore, I can come here and update it. But I'll keep total cost centers there. So when you're ready with any one of your selections, and what's nice is also you can just toggle over to the other dimension that you have in your rows and make another selection for that as well. I'm just going to keep that at net revenue. You'll just notice that this now has a lot in common with form selection in the web as well. So you just got to make sure you check off that blue check mark when you have a selection that you want to make. Okay. And then at any time, we do still have a preview button. So anytime you want to see what your report, your grid is looking like at this point, you can hit that little play button and you'll start to see how things are laying out. And your POV selections are going to be up here at the top, just looking like member selections as in the web for forms. If you want to go back to edit, go back to our edit button, we end up back in the form layout. But another nice thing about member selection is sort of an intuitive member selection up here. So if you know the name of the member you want to pick, you'll see that there are some common selections that just appear in this dropdown. You can start to type in member names and it will start to pick up not only just the name of the member that you just picked, but potential functions that you might want to just add right in for that member. So again, if I wanted just bottom members of operating income inclusive, that's an option that's here for me. And I can just say that's what I wanted and I pick it. And then I can X out net revenue if I didn't want that anymore. So that's a really nice intuitive way of picking your members as long as you know what you're looking for and you automatically get these options for potential functions you might want to use in your layout. And you'll also see that it will also tend to remember your recent selections. If you're using them commonly, you'll start to see the most recent selections you used in the dropdown as well. And anytime you're ready, you want to save this, you can always hit save. And so a lot of the properties as well that we're used to are available kind of similar, I would say, to the old system. You just have to come over here for your general grid options like member labels, text options, suppression is a big one that we'll often use. You just need to kind of click between true and false. You'll see that kind of bops up to the top of the selections again after you pick it. But if you want to suppress zeros and missing data, you just have to select these to be on. And then if I hit play again, you'll see that it is now going to suppress. So I'm only seeing my populated data. And then you have columns. So the little square indicated by the highlighted column shows you column options. So you need to click on your columns and you can set separate options for your columns, for your rows. And then the only thing I think is a little tricky to know is that for formatting, for fonts and bolding and underlining and shading, that is all available under what they're calling the cell settings. So if you're just looking at how do I format my fonts, my highlights, shading, you need to kind of highlight your whole row potentially and then select your shading or font options. So you just need to know to look under that cell option for those formatting. We've got sorting, and then we've got our conditional properties over here as well. Conditional formatting and any drill to content. All right, another common thing that you might want to know how to do that you did in your old reports is picking out the current point of view in your reports. So I'm just going to insert a new row. Other new nice thing about this reports system is that they've added in a separator row. So we used to use formula rows, text rows to be able to format separators in our reports, but now they have a specific type of row you can enter, so you don't have to put in a fake, a blank text row or a blank formula row to get a separator. You just can have a nice separator with nothing in it to appear in your report. I'm just right-clicking on these rows to get my options for inserting inserting the same kinds of rows and columns that we did in the old system. So I'm just going to put in a new data row. If I want to copy member selections, you can right click on your members. You can copy formatting. I'm just going to copy these members and paste them over here. And I believe it would have memorized those members if I had just not put in that separator row. If I insert a new data row right after, you see it's picking up my selections I just had. So let's say I just want to pick up the current point of view for my cost center instead of every cost center here. So I'm going to go into my member selection here. And you're going to go down here to the functions. So you'll see that you have some additional kinds of selections here. So again, if you don't know what function you want necessarily, you can scroll through them here. But you'll see there is one for current point of view, POV point of view. So I'm going to pick that and just hit select there. Hit OK. And I have two selections here. So I'm going to get rid of that bottom member. But now we see that cost center is up here in my point of view. So that'll be populated down here. You can also, if you, again, you know what you want and you just want to type it in, I want this one to be current point of view as well. You can just start typing in current POV and it knows you want to use that function and you can just click on it and it will populate in that row as well. And as usual in old POVs, you could put together a list of selections that a user can make, and you can do that as well. If I only want them to pick from level 0 cost centers from the POV, we make that the selection up here. So I'm just going to run this report. C100 is the selected POV. I've got a lot going on here in this report at this point. Let me just simplify this a little bit. Let's go down to one row. So I only see floor operations, and then you'd be able to pick a different member, and then that will be populated in as from the point of view into your rows. So that's a common one that we like to do. Another thing I want to mention about reports in the new reports functionality is that your data sources are already created as part of your application. So we used to have to set up data sources in order to connect to them with reports. Now you'll find when you create a new report, you're already given a selection of connections to each one of your cubes. So that's nice that you don't have to set that up anymore. Again, this view is just for setting up your grid. If you want to set up the overall setup of your report, you'll want to get back to that page layout. So if you ever need to get back there, you just close out of the grid. That brings you back to the POV setup. All right, so how about custom headings in the new system? So same concept, but you just need to know where to click. So if I wanted a new heading for my POV here, you actually have to kind of click into the heading section over here. So if I want to change the POV for this line, I have to click on this little cube and see which option I want to use, whatever the default is in your grid setup. Maybe you want to use the member, the alias, member and alias, or you want to have a custom heading, which is often what we do when we want to, put something else in our row labels. I don't know. I'm just going to say custom label here. You still have the ability to bring in text functions. So if you want to put some text along with your member alias, you can pick the functions from here. If you know, again, once you know how to type them, you can pick them out, but you have to say, I want to use the member alias for the cost center in row 1. It used to be that you put the carets around your member functions for text headings. That's no longer required. You can just use the builder here. So if I just hit run here, that didn't work. You know what? I don't think I saved it. So this is another thing to remember and this was kind of a part of the old system, is that you always had to remember to click the green checkbox to keep your to register your function. Let's try that again. Checkbox so that it should stay there. So that's kind of what I was going for. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but my handwritten, my manual text plus picking up the alias of the member that I chose for that from that POV. So I'm going to just go back to the default for heading here, and I don't think I had to do a green check mark on that. All right. Another thing that I like to do in the old reports is use the same as function. So if I knew I needed to use the same, like if I want a current point of view in this row, and then a couple rows later, I want to use that same selection. We used to have a function called same as. So use the same selection as in row 1. That is gone in this new in the new system, but there is a replacement for it, and that is called saved selections. So I'm just going to simplify this a little bit. Ooh. So I'm just putting net income back. You see that it kind of picks it up really fast. So sometimes you need to be careful if you want to see if you want to catch it before it updates it, even based on your typing. Just going to pick operating income here. So say I want both of these rows to pull my current point of view, and I'm going to have maybe a lot more, but maybe I'll change that in the future. So what I'm actually going to do is create a saved selection. So the way that we do that is you go into your member selector. You may have seen this before when I was coming down here, but saved selections is a function that you can pick. I have some other saved selections I put in here, but I want to save current point of view as a selection. So if you click here on the actions in your selections, there's this option called Save Selection. You give this a name. I don't know, I'll just call it Curve POV. You'll see that now I have this saved here. And now from now on, that name is going to be the represented by this saved selection. So if I hit OK here, you'll see now my current point of view here has been replaced by this nomenclature with the name of my saved selection and then the current point of view. So if I want to use this again over here, and I want these to always be referring to the same item, now when I go into member selection, I'll go to my saved selections, and you'll see that now I can pick this cur POV again. I'm going to get rid of this other one because it's independent. So now they're basically referring to the same selection. And just like the old same as, if I ever change the value of this save selection, it will update the value of that same save selection everywhere where this is used. So if I come in here and I go back into my, actually, I think I can just edit this one. If I actually go in and make a selection, I want this to now be this cost center and not the current point of view, then I would say for this, I'm editing my save selection for the current POV. I'm going to delete that selection. You could have a save selection that has multiple members in it. I just want this to be one. So now we see my cur POV is C115. I hit OK. And now the second row that refers to the cur POV, they're both referring to the same cost center. So again, anywhere where that save selection is used gets picked up when you change the save selection value. Another example I want to go into just briefly, because this could probably be another video on its own, but the concept of grouping is a new concept that sort of replaces the idea of auto calculations in the old reporting studio. But what this allows you to do is basically group data in a way in your reports automatically based on dimensions, rather than having to necessarily set up multiple totals within your report and repeat segments. So just kind of a brief example of what I'm doing here is, so I have just I have account, cost center, and entity in my rows. I have a couple accounts, a couple entities, and a couple cost centers here. But what I want to do in my report is group these totals by entity rather than this, the usual way that displays these combos in every combination all the way down the report. But basically what I have here is a group that has a separator, a bunch of members, and then a sum for those members and another separator. And you'll see here, this outline here is saying group these by, I believe I set this up to group by entity. And if you want to do grouping, there it is a right-click item on the rows. You'll see this is my grouping by entity. But what happens when I run this report, just briefly, is that I am grouping that set of rows I set up by entity and then putting in a total. So I'm getting a total sales operations for the accounts I set up and the cost centers. Then the next set of accounts by cost center, by entity and cost center. And I get a total for each one of those groupings. There's just only so much data here and I'm suppressing, but if you're interested in kind of auto calculation in the new system, look into grouping for sure. So the last thing I want to demo for the new reports functionality is shared reports, shared objects, which is what's replaced row and column templates and report objects. So things that you were able to reuse across reports that were linked to a master item. And then if you updated that master item, it got updated in all the reports that link to that item. So that's now called shared reports. And just the way that it's a little bit different is that you end up having a report that is a shared report, and that contains all of the items. I mean, you could have multiple shared reports, but that contains the items that become the kind of linked to other objects. So you sort of have these master reports that contain the gold objects, and then you link to those shared objects. So basically what you do is you create a report like normal with the objects that you would like to reuse in other objects. It could be a grid. Basically everything in that report is going to become a potentially reusable object. So here I've got a grid, I've got a logo, I've got a text object with some functions in it for a title. And so if you want these objects to become shared objects, you just have to save this report as a shared report. So this is already saved as a shared report, but you would just click Save As, and then when you're saving it, you would click Save as Shared Report. And I would likely give it a name that it contains items that you're potentially reusing. So this is already saved as a shared report. I just want to show you what that looks like in the folder structure. So a regular report has this icon, and a shared report has that little link item on it. So that tells you that this is a shared report and that basically everything in it has become now a shared object. So how do you use these objects in another item? So this is just my example of a shared object. And then here's my report, my regular report that's using shared objects. So if you want to use a new object, I'm going to delete this because this is actually linked there. But so say I want to add that text box from the other object, from the shared report into this report. So this is how you add items in here. I want to add a shared object. So you won't just choose grid, chart, text, or image here. You'll pick from your shared objects. Then you need to actually navigate to that shared report in your folder. So it's going to say, okay, again, you could have multiple reports that are shared reports. My shared report is located down here. You'll only be able to see reports that are designated as shared reports. And then it'll say, what do you want to pick from? So you might want to label your items so you know which items these are, but I want that text box. Then you need to move it to the right over here as your selected object, hit OK. And now I have that that text box from my shared report in here. And just like shared reports, linked objects, if they get updated in one place, they are going to get updated in every place. If I ever wanted to change that text, I would go back to my shared report. And then you would edit the object in here. I'm just going to take out this word updated. Hit save. And close this, close that. Go back to my report that used that shared object. And you'll see that that word updated got removed in here. So anywhere that's using that object is going to get updated as well, but you do have to go back to the original shared object to update it. All right, so again, there's a lot of little differences and things to learn in the new Report Studio. Hopefully that highlights some of the big ones that you might be curious about what to do in the new system. The last thing I just want to address overall is if you want to migrate old Financial Web Studio reports into the new system. So you can migrate reports and financial reporting to reports, but there are some things that are just not one-to-one translations. It is a new system. So if you do try to migrate or import Web Studio reports into here, it will try to migrate and adapt as many pieces as possible to your new report, but there just are differences that just cannot be migrated or translated. There are solutions that are different in both systems, and not all elements exist in both solutions, as we've seen. So you might need to migrate, and then you might have to do some work in terms of editing that migrated report to ensure that it looks the way you want it to look. So another thing is books and bursting. These are functionally different in the new system, so you will need to, you won't be able to import books and bursting. You will need to redo your books batches and scheduled batches in the new system. While you can migrate saved objects like grids, text boxes, and images from financial to reporting to reports, chart objects cannot be migrated. They're not supported for migration. So you will likely have to recreate your charts. Any migrated object, as I just discussed, those shared reports become the basis of shared objects. So each migrated object you import it will create its own shared report for each one of those items. If you do want to import your reports, you have them in your system and you want to move them into the report system, you will see you do have some other icons up here. So the financial reporting Web Studio objects, they are located here in this card. So this is the old folder item. And so if you do have old reports, you can navigate to them. And then you can click over here, migrate, and it will do the process to migrate that into the new reporting system. You could select everything and migrate all as well. So it'll tell you to select a destination. I'll put it into my demo folder here, and it will say it successfully migrated. So then you'd go back to the new report folder, set up, navigate down there, and then try to open up your report and see how it looks in terms of the new system. And again, from there, you'll likely have to, there's not really anything in this test report. So this is just how a very simple report from Financial Reporting Studio. It looks, similar. There wasn't anything too fancy in this, but from here, you'll have to just edit it, make sure it has everything you expect it to, and update it from there. If there is anything that did not migrate successfully, there were some validation errors, you will likely receive, when you open a report that's been migrated, the system will display any errors that occurred during the migration process. So errors don't necessarily prevent it from being migrated, but you might have to resolve those errors in order for the report to display properly. So the most common error is that the data source name that you used in Financial Reporting Web Studio is not the same, does not match up with the data source for the new reports. As mentioned, the system automatically creates the data source names. So it is possible the first thing you need to do is update the data source for this report to one for the report system. So that is located here when you go into the grid under General Settings, Data Source. You'll likely have to set up the correct data source for your reports. Another common issue could be missing fonts. If you used a font in your old Reporting Web Studio that's not available in your new system, you might need to either change your fonts in the report or upload fonts into your system. And object sizing, positioning, reports isn't going to validate, where the object sizes and positions, compared to the margins. So you'll likely want to do some revalidation and rechecking regarding just how everything's laid out in your report after migration. Obviously, if you're migrating reports within one system, just from Financial Reporting Web Studio to the report system, you're going to it should be, pretty smooth in terms of member selection. But if you're moving your reporting from an old web studio and another application to a new application, you're likely to run into, potentially more errors in terms of missing members and just making sure you have equivalents in your new system to your old system. So there's always that to consider when migrating any reports, really. All right, so that's just a quick overview of some of the functions available in the newer reports functionality, how it differs from old Financial Reporting Web Studio, and what you might encounter if you want to migrate from your old Reporting Web Studio reports to the new system. There's plenty of more little differences that we encourage you to look up. Maybe we can cover some more of them in the future. But overall, hopefully the new reporting web studio offers a lot in terms of additional ease of use, stability, user friendliness, and integration across other Oracle EPM applications, especially as it integrates with the narrative reporting application. So thanks for listening. Please reach out if you have any questions and hope to see you again soon.